Thanks for watching Layman Racing Podcast. Please make sure you check out my recent episodes. They're pretty cool. Thank you for watching and thank you for the support and enjoy the episode. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Layman Racing Podcast. Your host, Dalton McVeigh. Unfortunately, co-host could not make it tonight as well. Have to see what's going on with that. As far as that goes, I want to say a big shout out to the guy that won the contest there at the Barrick Racing. They run the contest through the Layman Racing Podcast page. As far as like who had the best looking cars, etc., and a lot of people voted. And it just came down to the last six, and it looks like Barrick Racing ended up taking the win on that contest. So when the next one comes out, it'd be pretty cool to get a hold of for sure. And also, so we got a couple videos here at the beginning here. Let me go ahead and share these here. So we got a couple. Let's see. So this one is going to be a little bit of a history of the Chili Bowl. I thought it was pretty cool to share. Let's go ahead and get this on here. A little 2 minutes here.
It all started with a bowl of chili. First sponsored by the Chili Bowl Food Company of Bob Berryhill in 1987, the name stuck. But what makes this race different than all the rest? For starters, it takes place in a nearly 450,000 square foot building in Oklahoma, known as the SageNet Center. Constructed in 1966, you can't miss the 76-foot golden driller that guards its entrance. This state monument is dedicated to the men of the petroleum industry who, by their vision and daring, have created from God's abundance a better life for mankind. For the purest form of motorsports in the world, it means something even more. Winning a golden driller solidifies you as one of the best. There is no other race on earth that brings every discipline together to compete in one place quite like this. Sprint cars, late models, modified, stock cars, you name it. The champions list reads as a who's who in American motorsports. From Vogler to Blaney, Boat, Borst, Cruzman, Drake, McCready, Stewart, Gardner, and of course, Sammy. Kevin won 4 in a row before BC finally broke through in 2014. Rico, Bell, Larson, Thorson all got theirs. And now Logan Seavey sits atop the throne. The tradition continues in 2025 for the 39th time. And the stakes are even higher. It's 350 plus cars. It's slide or die. Make it through your qualifying night, take no prisoners, and maybe, just maybe, you can get yourself a driller. Welcome to Tulsa. Welcome to the Chili Bowl Nationals.
We got a battle for the front here on Tuesday night.
The win here is the biggest it gets, plain and simple.
I like being Winston Cup races, and I hope Joe Gibbs doesn't take his personal with it. This kicks ass.
This has been my whole life coming, man. I've come here for so long, and for me to be able to win here is it's a dream come true. I'm sorry NASCAR, I'm sorry Daytona, but this is the biggest effing race I've ever won. Mind-blowing to win is, man, I don't even know how to explain it yet.
I want it more and more and more. I want to get closer and closer and closer to that driller.
All right, guys, that was a Chili Bowl. Pretty cool little place to go when they want to go out there and race with it's the biggest midget racing sprints there around the year. This next video we got is looks like a wild ride for Jordan Kohler and Charlotte in Heat 2. Let's go ahead and share that one. Yep, that's the one. Okay. All right, here we go. That was live coverage from Down South Productions. And then I'll go ahead and share to the other screen here. Got one more video. And then we'll get to our guest here tonight. Here we go. All right, looks like Josh May here at the Lucas Oil Series Amica Mod Light.
May with that run off of turn number 2, going to challenge the outside for the race lead. Oh, he's into the wall, hard and over. Josh May rolling that car big time down the back straightaway. Wow. They're rolling down the back straightaway. Look at that run off of turn number 2. And I mean, he just tried to get it there and just end over end over end, and then got contact with another car there, and all those cars trying to run it to a halt there. You saw Benson come in there late and give him a little bit of a.
All right, guys, that was all the videos I had for the introduction today. That was pretty cool, I gotta admit. All right, so here we go. We're gonna go ahead and get our guest on here tonight. So he's been inducted in the Hall of Fame for dirt racing in Michigan in 2010. With one heck of a career, please welcome Jim Slade to the stage. Hey,
Hello,
how you doing,
everybody.
Jim?
Good. How's everybody doing tonight?
Good, not too bad. So, just kick things off. Tell the viewers where you're from and more about you.
Well, I live in Osseo, Michigan now, but I'm from Hillsdale. That's where I lived most of my life. So.
All right, awesome. So, growing up, I know you had a heck of a legacy growing up, with family and, especially your dad at that. What was your legacy growing up into the racing world as it went?
Well, it was kind of the only real thing I knew. My dad raced since I was probably 2 or 3 years old, something like that. So I never knew anything but being around, racing. So that made it easy for me to fall into it, basically, because I grew up working on his car, helping him, and I pretty much knew what I needed to know by the time I got old enough to be able to race. So, in that regard, that made it easy for me to get into racing.
So, obviously with, any racing career, you pretty much got to have, you have your challenging moments and stuff, but what was the biggest challenging moment that you have in your career?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to point to one thing. You have to learn the ropes. I wasn't real good or real fast when I first started. I built my own car and learned to do it. And a lot of things you learn because you make mistakes. That's how you learn a lot of the things. And so after you've done it a while, you get better because you've made all those mistakes. But I don't know that I point to one thing.
Right. All right. So, I know you mentioned something in the past about you've been to Bryan Speedway. So what other tracks have you been to, throughout the career?
Well, with the modified, we raced mostly at Butler. When I first started, Manchester Speedway was still racing. So we raced at Manchester, Butler. We raced at Bryan, Ohio. My dad raced at Angola Speedway. It was a dirt track back then. It's still there now, operating as a paved track. I didn't race there myself, other than I have taken my old car down to a vintage show there.
Gotcha.
But that was in the modified, and then I raced the Sod Sprint Car Series for a couple of years. So we went to all the different tracks that Sod raced at during the early 80s. So there was quite a few. I'm not sure I could even name all of those. But,
So, was there what was all the cars that you had? I know you mentioned you had a modified. Was there any more cars that you've raced back in the day, or?
Well, I raced my first car was my own modified, which I built with my dad's help. And then I raced an old car that my dad had a little bit. And then I got into the sprint car, which the sprint car I drove was owned by Art Braithwaite out of Jackson. He's a Hall of Famer as well. And I drove for him for 2 years in a sprint car in the Sod series. Then after that got done, we tried to have our own sprint car for a year, but it was a little too expensive. We couldn't really compete well because we didn't have enough money to do that. So we decided to build a new modified and go back to what we could afford and what we knew how to do. So then we started building our own modifieds again. That was in 1984. And I built a car. We ran it for 2 years, sold it, and I built another car. And that's the one that ran all the way until we were done racing, basically. I think the last year we raced, we had an IMCA style car because they had stopped running the cars we were racing and went to that newer style modified, which everybody seems to be running now.
Right.
So we did have one of those for a year or so.
All right. So, what was I would say, what was because obviously there's a crazy moment in racing. Was there a crazy moment for you in a sense back when you were racing in your career as far as like the craziest?
Well, a couple different ones come to mind. I had a real bad flip down at Oakshade. We did race at Oakshade. I didn't bring Oakshade up, but we did have a few special races there. They didn't run our modifieds on a regular basis, but they would just have a show once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
And we went there on a Friday, and I ran over a guy's wheel going into the third turn and barrel rolled.
Oh.
I've been told it was 8 or 10 times. I don't really know. It felt like that much. but we took the car home and worked on it hard all day, and actually got it put back together good enough that we raced the next night at Butler in that same car, and finished third in the feature. I made a few more changes and straightened a couple more things out for Sunday, which was Bryan, Ohio that weekend, and I won the feature at Bryan, Ohio that same weekend. So that was a pretty crazy weekend. And then in 1988, I was running at Butler and my transmission shaft broke and cut my leg real bad. And so that was a kind of scary, and that put me out for the rest of the season. It was in the fourth week of the season that happened in the heat race, and it cut me bad enough I had to get doctor stuff working on my leg. It cut clear down to the bone. It didn't break the bone, but it cut the meat out clear down to the bone. And so I was out for the rest of the summer with that healing up.
So I would say here, what was what was your proudest moment, going through the racing as far as that goes? Like,
well, I feel I can remember my first win was pretty darn exciting, and it was just a heat race, and it wasn't the fastest cars. It was back then everybody qualified, and you ran heat races against people that were in a similar speed that
right.
you were. So like the fastest 10 cars, they raced in the first heat,
mm-hmm.
and so on down the line. And I don't remember whether I was in the fourth heat or what number heat it was. It was at Manchester Speedway, and that was the first time I ever won. So that was a pretty exciting moment,
Oh, for sure.
Of course, then you win, you get better and you win. I won in the sprint car one time at Oakshade, so that was exciting. Then winning championships. That all stuff just happens as you go along, so it's not one moment exactly, but you are proud of all those things.
Oh, definitely. I know once I ever comes around for me to get a win, it'll definitely be something to be proud of, because I've been about 4 years been doing this. So what was your motivation in the racing aspect of it back then, going through, like, what motivated you to go week for week? And then, you still come out and you've been coming out in the Hall of Famer nights here recently as well. So,
well, probably the history of the family doing it. My dad always did it, and he built his own cars. We did all the work on them, and if there was any way that we could get the car fixed up and put back together to go to the racetrack, we always would do that. So that just kind of was how we thought about it. And We just worked hard at it, and it was a lot of fun, good challenge, everybody's over there trying to do the same thing, working on their car and trying to make it go faster.
Oh yeah. So how many? I know you mentioned you had a couple wins in the heat races, but like, how many wins total have you had throughout your whole career?
I never even came close to keeping track of that, so it'd be hard to say. I would estimate some between 100 and 200 somewhere, probably.
Gotcha. Awesome.
But that's really a guess because, like I said, you start out, you're just hoping to get one win, Well, then you get it.
Right, and then you just lose track after a while, and then
you're not at that point. You're not thinking, "Well, I'm going to start writing these down so I can keep track of this." You're just happy you won one.
Right.
So all of a sudden, you go along and you get better, and you start winning a lot. And, I mean, later on, when we were really good at it, I expected to win every race I was in. But, you don't always do that, but
oh yeah,
once we got things figured out, that's how I felt going there. I didn't think anybody could beat me, and sometimes I did, and sometimes I didn't.
So I know you mentioned the tracks you raced at, but what was your most favorite one?
Well, I really enjoyed in the sod series when we were sprint car racing. We went up to a track that was called Winston Speedway, which was quite a ways up north in Michigan. And I ran well there and enjoyed that. But I think Butler, I raced the most for sure at Butler, and it was really a good track all those years. So I would say Butler for sure.
Awesome. So I would say, so like obviously you said when you first started racing, your dad was a big part of it. Was that who inspired you to get into racing growing up, or was there something else that inspired you, or how did that unfold there?
No, I think it was just because I always enjoyed racing. We went every weekend, of course, to go watch Dad race. And when I was old enough to help work on the car, then I felt more involved because I was helping work on the car, and it was just kind of a natural thing. As soon as I got old enough, I was going to have my own. I wanted to try it.
All right. So, so basically, when you're going like to these these Hall of Famer nights, you're going to these back then when you raced weekly. So how important was like fan interactions to you? Like, a fan come up say, "Hey, I'm your biggest fan." How important is that to you in this perspective?
Oh, I always really enjoyed that, especially the kids. My dad always kept the car painted up with different pictures and stuff. We had a Snoopy picture on our wing for years, and the kids would kind of identify with that, I think. So we always had a lot of young fans, and it was I always really enjoyed that. We had some fans at Butler that would set up in the top of turn where you come off turn 4, way up at the top of the bleachers, and they made a yellow blanket with 74 embroidered on it because they were fans of our car. And
awesome.
And I could see that from the track, with them up there. And I always tried to remember to wave at them and stuff. So things like that were neat.
Oh, yeah. So
kids, I'm sorry, I had like 2 or 3 different younger fans draw me pictures of the race car and trophies and some different things. I've still got some of that stuff. I've kept it.
Oh, awesome. So throughout the years, even here recently, was there anybody like sponsor wise or anybody you wanted to thank that like helped you get to weekly, just getting out there and being able to race? Or
well, we didn't ever really have a lot of sponsorship back in the day. Racing wasn't as expensive as it is now.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Cars were all homemade back then. I don't know, maybe if you could even go buy a race car somewhere back then, but everybody racing at Butler basically built their own car, or I'm sure there were a lot of people that bought one from somebody else that built it, maybe. But we always started right from scratch and built our own stuff, and we raced with our own money. There was some sponsorship, I'm sure, on Art's sprint car, but I don't remember right offhand anyone in particular there. Rick Spieth had a tire shop in Hillsdale, and he sponsored us a little bit on our modified. And then I think I can remember one other couple that just put a little bit of money into it, just because they wanted their name on the car. They were fans, and so they helped us a little. But we pretty much ran on our own stuff and our own money. But you could do that back then because racing didn't cost as much.
Right, for sure. So was there anyone you wanted to thank for like bringing out your car from here recently?
Well, probably my daughter. It was her idea to get the car back.
Gotcha.
The idea came up somewhere, and I think it was her idea, her idea, maybe, and her boyfriend's, that it'd be cool to get that old car back, and then we got lucky and found it available, and it was, so we probably wouldn't have done that if they weren't sort of pushing to do that. And it's been nice. We got it when we got it back. My dad was still alive, so he got to see it and sit in it. And, of course, then we fixed it up and started taking it back to the track, and I've been enjoying that.
So here is the updated picture of the car he was talking about here recently. This was back in 2022. He was out at the Hall of Famer night there at Butler Motor Speedway. And then this one, I know you wanted to explain a little bit on this. You drove this car for 2 years or a year or something like that? Or
I believe it was 2 years. That was owned by Art Braithwaite in Jackson, who's a Hall of Famer himself. He raced for years and years, and then when he got older and didn't want to race anymore, he had cars and had different people driving them. And I was lucky enough to work with him on this and drive it for a couple of years. We won one feature. We raced the SOD series. Back then was a traveling group of sprint cars that raced in Michigan mostly.
Awesome. And then I know this one, I know we were unable to see which place this was at. I know it was a little blurry. It's right off the Hall of Famer site, so it's a little blurry. But anyways, this one's a victory photo from somewhere in a say. I know he said his dad was right there where that flag was, and then
yeah, my dad's there, and that could be my cousin Ralph, but I'm not sure. The picture's just blurry enough, and I can't see it quite well enough to be sure. But my cousin Ralph raced himself too, but he also, when he wasn't racing, he would help us a lot of times. And we had a lot of family involved that way in racing and helping. And
awesome.
We had one night at Butler where there was 7 family members at racing, and the same night, between my dad, me, my brothers, and cousins. There were 7 of us in the racing program one night.
All right. So I guess it brings down to our one last question here. So if someone is struggling to meet their goals, to meet their dream, rather it be racing or rather it be, any career that they dream of, what advice would you give to them on that?
Well, for me, we just always would keep trying. Like I said, when I first built my first car, I wasn't real fast, and I didn't know, what needed. I had learned a lot from my dad, but I still was starting from scratch myself. So I had to try things, and a lot of things worked and a lot of things didn't work. When they didn't work, I tried to make them better and keep going. And for me, that worked. We weren't real fast at the start, but we got better and got fast enough to be good and competitive and won a lot. So just got to keep at it. It doesn't hurt to ask questions, watch what the people are doing that are successful, because they know what they're doing, obviously. Sometimes you can learn a lot. And I always tried to help the younger drivers if they would come around, ask questions, things like that. So you can learn a lot just from the people that you race with that are successful.
For sure. All right. Well, I'm gonna open up the comment section if there's anybody that wants any question or have any questions, or regardless on that. Also, thank you for watching Team Savage Racing. Also want to give a shout out to them. Let's see. I don't see nobody else posting any comments. All right. Well, thank you for coming on, Jim. It was a pleasure to being able to do an interview on you.
Thank you.
You have a great day.
Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Jim Slade, Michigan Dirt Hall of Famer. Glad to bring him on and being able to hear his awesome story and, how he got into racing is all that as well. Also, I wanted to give a shout out to Team Savage Racing. As I was just saying, they have a podcast interview down south there. They also do a pretty good interview as well. So make sure you check them out every now and then. I know it's on a Saturday, but also, I also want to say that big shout out to, make sure you guys check out our friends at Racing Paradise. Make sure you check them guys out. Also, big shout out to Barrick Racing, obviously the winner of the contest through the Layman Podcast page. And so this contest was pretty cool to see, a bunch of people comment on there and being able to see all types of different car pictures and stuff like that. Be awesome. It was awesome to see all that. Also, next episode, which is the 12th, which is this, I believe it's this Wednesday. Yeah. This Wednesday, I think. Basically, we have Jason Deschler coming on at 7 p.m. Eastern time, so make sure we check that out as well. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.